Hello everyone, this is Hector with Inkluminati. I was recently asked a question by several people, and I thought it was such a good question that I would make a video about it. So that question was, why are you putting Indian flex nibs in the pins that you're restoring? And that's a really good question. A lot of times I'll get a vintage pin at an antique store, and I'll restore it, and I'll get everything going, the filling system, the body, I'll polish it up, and I'll get to the nib, and I'll go to tune the nib, and the nib is so cheap and so thin, and it's steel, and it's corroded because it's just been sitting in caked on ink for all those years, that it's garbage. It doesn't work very good. It's all corroded. It won't tune the way it's supposed to tune. The tines won't align because it's so thin. There's just a variety of reasons. There's no tipping anymore, and it's such a cheap nib that's not really worth sending out to like Greg Manuskin to get retipped. It's not worth it. It's just the nib's a goner. It's just gone. It's garbage. So what I like to do is replace it with a nib that is really nice. If you're going to replace a nib, you might as well replace it with something that works good. And what I like to use is fountainpenrevolution.com is a store that sells Indian flex nibs, both, well actually they have three sizes now, 5, 5.5, and 6. And those nibs work really good. I like them a lot. And I am going to show you just how well they work. In this pen here, this is a TWSBI VAX 700 that I have fitted with a Waterman 100-year nib, a 100-year pen nib, which is probably the nicest vintage semi-flex nib I have ever used. It's really nice. It's a really springy, really enjoyable nib. It's the benchmark of semi-flex nibs in my book. So there's the standard. And this pen here is a gnarly, junky, scratched up wherever that one of these nibs belongs to. And in this pen, I have installed a Fountain Pen Revolution FPR flex nib. And the nibs come, I would say, as a medium semi-flex nib. Medium to broad, I would say. Which is fine. They're fun to play with. I really like them. They flex easier, for me anyway, than the Noodler's flex nibs. And I don't feel bad if I just really mess one up, which I have done in the past. And this one I have tuned, I don't know, I've probably got 10 to 20 hours into this one. I'll use it for an hour, tune it for an hour, set it down, pick it up the next day, tune it a little bit more, use it a little bit more. And I've gotten this one to the point where it's a pretty good approximation of the Waterman nib back there. And let's do a writing sample and find out just why I like these. All right, let's do some writing with these and see what's up. We're going to start with the Waterman 100-year pen nib that's in this TWSBI. This is what I would call vintage semi-flex. It's a really nice nib. I really enjoy this. So we'll give this one a try a minute. See how it writes. And we'll write with it like a normal, sane person would use a fountain pen, and not some crazy flex junkie like me. So we'll just use normal light pressure like you're supposed to use a fountain pen. And next up we will try the gnarly, scratched up, tarnished Wherever with an FPR nib. And we'll see how that does. And we'll use this one with no pressure, like a normal, sane person. And something I like to do is draw birds, and I'm not going to draw birds. But what I am going to do is the flourish that I like to draw birds with. I like to draw their tail feathers, both with the top side of the nib and the bottom side of the nib for the thick and thin lines in the flourishes. That was with the Wherever, with the FPR nib. And we will also use the Waterman 100-year pen here. That also has thick and thin lines on the top and bottom. And back over to the FPR nib. And back over to the Waterman nib. So I think that is a reasonable demonstration of why I like these FPR flex nibs. One of these pens is considered, well, the nib anyway, the absolute gold standard, highly sought after, bid way too high on eBay nib, the Waterman semi-flex nib. And that is a few dollars from India flex nib from Fountain Pen Revolution. They look really close. And they perform really close. I would say in terms of how hard I'm pushing them, I don't think I'm pushing one of these harder than the other. However, be warned that, like I said, I've tuned this one for about, I'd say a good 20 hours I spent on it, writing, tuning with micromesh, writing some more, tuning some more, just spending some time fiddling with it, getting it where I wanted. So it isn't going to write like this straight out of the box. It will require some effort on your part. But the results, if you're on a budget, which most of us are, if you're on a budget, these perform just as good as a vintage semi-flex nib. Now the full flex nibs, like the Waterman No. 2 wet noodles and some of the Richard Bender nibs and things like that, those are on a whole different level. I've yet to see another nib that can perform like that. That's not a dip pen nib. Dip pens will operate like that, and you can fiddle a dip pen nib into a fountain pen body. I actually have one of those pens that someone made for me. Penopoly. Roger Cromwell made one of those for me. So you can fiddle a dip pen nib into a fountain pen. You can do that fairly cheap with the right dip pen nib. But in terms of general use, the FPR nibs, they make them in 3 different sizes. You can generally fit them in the kind of pen you're working on, and they approximate vintage semi-flex rather well. And so I believe that's the answer to that question. Why do I like FPR nibs so much? There's your answer. They do a great job. Thanks for watching.